this evening. When you look at how much time it takes to put together a webinar, you really never know what type of response you're going to get. And I did my first webinar a few months ago. We had about 150 people attending, and I was really very pleased with that. But this has gone beyond my expectations. I was really flattered that so many of you seem to be interested in hearing my views on going paperless. As of this morning, we had 487 people that were registered for the webinar, and more than half of you are already here. So thank you very much for attending. My initial goal was to speak for about an hour or so and then open up to questions on the phone. With such a large group, I really had to make a few adjustments. I'm going to talk for about 45 to 50 minutes so that I can take as many questions as possible. All of you, when you got online, you should see a little box for the GoToWebinar control panel. That's the area where you can ask your questions. So just feel free to ask questions throughout the lecture as they come to you. I'll try to get to all of them. I'm not going to be able to get to any of the questions until I'm actually done speaking. By tomorrow, I will be sending all of you a number of things. As soon as you log out when the webinar is over, you're going to get a short survey. Please indicate on that survey if you want to have my office to arrange for a personalized call with your office. I never charge for my time to do something like that, and I'd love to give you all one-to-one help if I can. You're also going to get an email with links to download the entire webinar as well as lecture notes, which are basically just a copy of all the slides that you're going to see this evening. So as I said before, don't worry if you have to take a phone call or the kids are screaming or whatever. You're not going to miss anything. Also tomorrow, Amanda from my office will email to everyone that attended the CE forms. So I'm sure most of you already know who I am, but just to give you a real brief introduction, my name is Lauren Levine. I did practice as a periodontist for 10 years. Over the last 9 years, I have dedicated myself primarily to technology in the technology realm. I work with offices all over the country to help them go chartless, go paperless, make some of the tough decisions. And as I said earlier, I would certainly love the opportunity to work with any of you if you feel that I could help you in that regards. I do have a blog that I post to on a daily basis. It's thedigital.dentist.blogspot.com. I will put something on there every day that I think will be of value to dental practices. It might be a new version of Dentrix that I saw, or Intraoral Camera, or maybe something I saw at the Chicago Midwinter meeting. If you want to, you can actually go on to the blog and register so that rather than you going to the blog every day, the blog can come to you. So that's really a nice feature to have there as well. I have a tech guide that I produce every year. It typically comes out in February. This year we're going to be delayed a little bit because I really wanted to wait for the Chicago Midwinter meeting. There's going to be a lot of stuff there, so it's probably going to be closer to the summer before the 2010-2011 guide comes out. When I lecture on going chartless and paperless, it's typically an all-day lecture. So I really had two choices when I was putting this webinar together. I could either talk really, really fast, which I decided wasn't such a good idea, or I could split it up into parts. Tonight's really the first part, and it's designed to be more of an overview. I'm going to tell you why you need to go paperless or chartless, and basically give you a game plan or a treatment plan of how you should do that. What are the steps? What order should you do those steps in? The future webinars, we're going to go into more detail on other topics. We're going to look much more closely at practice management software and some of the third-party add-on software that you're going to need to really go completely paperless. We're going to take a much more in-depth look at image management and digital x-rays. I'm going to certainly touch on all of these in this evening's presentation, but we're going to delve into a lot more detail when we have more time to look at those individually. We're going to certainly spend some time talking about the infrastructure, the computers and the networks and monitors and mounts and all the stuff that you need to have in place. We'll also look at one of the webinars, look at some of the great high-tech stuff that's coming out, the CAD-CAM and digital impressions and cone beam 3D. This is all really exciting stuff as well, so I'll certainly do that for one of the webinars. And we're also going to look at data backup and data protection. Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening, but I'll go into more detail. And the webinars will probably be about 5 to 6 weeks apart. It really takes a lot of time for me to put these together, so you'll certainly get emails to let you know about that. You're not going to hear a lot of plugs during this presentation for stuff that I sell or anything like that. I don't have any DVDs to sell you. The one and only plug I'm going to make is that if you are interested in hearing more about going chartless, going paperless in a lot more detail, I was honored that at the end of last year, LVI had decided to consider me to be a speaker for them. I will be giving courses at LVI starting in March. I'm doing one also in June and October. You can go to their website and learn more about the presentation. It's really what we're talking about today. It's a day-and-a-half seminar. I'd love to have any of you there as well. So let's get started. I'm sure some of you have heard of the year 2014. It has a very special significance for us in the dental field. Why is that? Well, basically, the government is mandating that all patient records, both medical and dental, really are supposed to be electronic by the end of the year 2014. That was first proposed by President Bush, the younger version of him, in 2004. Right now, the fact that we have a current lack of standards of being able to share information between offices, and of course many of you I'm sure are aware of the election results in Massachusetts a couple of days ago that may affect the health care passage bill, that may delay the deadline. I remember when the government decided that we were going to have digital TV signals, and they gave us about a 9-year warning on it. But to come February of 2009, there were still many, many people that were not prepared, and they had to extend it a few more months. So same thing with this. It may happen. It may not. Who knows? Maybe the elections in 2012 will change everything. But we have to work under the assumption that this is pretty much where we're headed. So my overall best advice I can give you is that dental practices should start now. You really don't want to guess wrong on this one and find that it is the end of or middle of 2014 and you're just not prepared. Now, if you don't want to believe me on all of this, that's fine. I've listed a bunch of links here. As I said, you're going to get a copy of the entire webinar plus lecture notes, so you don't need to write this down now. It's not going to be on the screen long enough anyways. But if you don't want to believe it from me, there's a lot of good resources online. You could just Google 2014 electronic health record, and you'll get a few billion hits there. So there are a number of resources online to get a little bit more information about this. When the government made this decision, being the government, you know that they probably are going to give us two ways to get there. They can either, give us the carrot, well, not necessarily that carrot, but a carrot like this, or they could use the stick. So what about the carrot? What is the form that that's going to take? So I've already talked about the stick, that they're going to potentially make it mandatory. I'm sure many of you have heard of the stimulus bill. There's a few acronyms and terms that you need to be familiar with. It's called the ARRA, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. That's the overall package. The one that applies for us as healthcare providers is the Health Information Technology for Economic and Clinical Health Act. That's a mouthful. Almost everybody refers to it as the High-Tech Act. The other term that you're going to be hearing a lot about over the next year or so is CCHIT, the Certification Commission for Healthcare Information Technology. This is basically the licensing body that's going to determine whether you have met the criteria, whether software has met the criteria for an office that wants to be paperless. It's the only one that I know of right now. There's always the possibility there's going to be more coming down the road, but that's what we're going to see. What is the carrot? Well, what we're hearing is that there's going to be up to $44,000 per office starting in the year 2011. Exactly what form that's going to take, whether it's tax rebates or actual refunds or money in the bank, who knows? Don't hold me to this because this is the numbers that I'm hearing. This is what everyone's talking about. But if for some reason it doesn't happen, please do not send me a bill for $44,000. I probably won't pay for it. But really we have to work under the assumption this will happen. So other key terms, and you're going to hear a lot about this as well as you start doing starting to do some research on this, is that you have to have made meaningful steps towards going chartless or paperless. Who really knows what that definition is? That needs to be determined, and it really has to be certified. There's going to have to be some licensing body that says, yes, this software, this package that you have in place meets our criteria for an electronic health record, and therefore you can go ahead and get those funds. So as I said, it will be starting in 2011. Right now, to my knowledge, there's no dental software that meets those certifications. So hopefully they're going to get on the bandwagon. It's really confusing. I'm not going to kid you and say, hey, it's all laid out. It's really easy for anyone to get the certification. It's very confusing for everybody. So keep your ear to the ground because this stuff should be coming soon. Again, here's just a few more websites that talk about the stimulus bill and the money that's out there as well. So definitely feel free to check these out online as well. So let's talk about going chartless, going paperless. And I'd like to use, even though I use the term the paperless practice, I'm not a huge fan of it simply from the standpoint that it's really difficult for any practice to be completely paperless. However, we do have a number of offices that we've worked with that have gone chartless. So are there any nuggets or pearls of wisdom here? Because, when I go to any type of continuing education course, as long as I get 2 or 3 little nuggets, then it was worthwhile to me. So one of the things I will be stressing throughout this evening and certainly in the future webinars as well, there really is no right or wrong here. There's going to be a best for your individual practice. But if we're looking at digital x-rays as an